Hey everybody, Ethan here, and I've got a review for you guys today. It's finally time for my review of the Sega NP9872. Now, this is a laptop that I bought a while ago. You guys can check out the unboxing if you're interested right up here in the corner. But it is a 17.3-inch gaming notebook from Sega that you can customize to your liking. It is a monster, first off. But overall, I've been really impressed so far. The initial impressions were great. I've had it for about a month now, and I'm really enjoying it so far, and I'm impressed with what Sega was capable of doing. So the first thing that I'd like to address before jumping into the review, though, is this monster of a power brick. So there's it, like, next to my head, or next to a 17-inch gaming laptop. You can tell this thing is huge. It's thick. The power cable's thick. It's a 330 watt power adapter, and it actually requires more than one of these if you have a multiple GPU configuration. So this is running desktop components, meaning 330 watts wouldn't cut it if you went really far with it. But yeah, this one here requires either two 230 watts or two 330 watts, depending on your configuration, or the single 330 like I've got here. But you can add more later. Anyway, though, jumping straight into the review, so going into the specifications of this, which is actually the lesser importance of the review because of the fact that it's customizable, but my particular configuration here is going to be the 17.3-inch version with the 12 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD with no hard drive. I added that later myself. It's got GTX 1070 desktop graphics card, not a mobile graphics card, and then it's also got the desktop 6700K overclockable Intel CPU. You're not going to be doing much overclocking on this, I'll spoil that right now. Even with the fans at 100%, there's not a lot of headroom. The thermals on this, thermal management, fitting a desktop in something this small, I mean, albeit it's huge for a laptop, but something this small is a huge challenge. They only, I'm assuming, put in the 6700K because it does have a higher base clock frequency, and the coolers so happen to be able to handle it, because this is also configurable with the standard 6700, which I believe it drops $50 off of the price, which is a lower base clock and lower boost clock. So I'd recommend getting the K model just because it's a very small price premium when you're considering something this expensive. So anyway, continuing with the specs, my display here is actually going to be the 1080p 120Hz non-adaptive refresh rate panel. So that means there's no G-Sync, there's no FreeSync. I can't get FreeSync on this laptop anyway, but which is a little bit unfortunate to see for such a high refresh rate panel. I would really like to see a 1080p 120Hz G-Sync option, but the other options out there for the 1070 model, which is mine here, the 9872, is going to be this, or I believe you can get the 1440p screen. I'm not sure, that may only be available in the 1080 option, but if you configure this with a 1080 or multiple 1080s, I know that your options are between two screens. It's either a 4K 60Hz G-Sync panel, IPS, or it's going to be a 1440p 120Hz G-Sync panel. I'd take the later there. I would not go with the 4K panel. Two 1080s, because you can configure this with multiple GPUs, would dominate 4K. They are capable of that, but I don't think that the lower refresh rate is worth the increase in resolution on this size of panel. I suppose if you're using this as a productivity machine, it'd work for that, but the battery life isn't particularly good because it's running desktop components, so I would not recommend that. But now, anyway, so any other specs on this is pretty simple, honestly. You've got, 4 RAM slots, you've got 2 hard drive slots, they're 2.5-inch slots, you've got 2 M.2 SSD slots, and 2 MXM 3.0 GPU slots. And then you've got a chiclet feeling keyboard, even though it's not a chiclet keyboard. There's not very much travel. Basically no flex in this keyboard, though, which is super awesome. I like to see it. It is a pretty good joy to type on. But if you're the type of person that really likes a lot of travel distance, there's not here. And you would think for such a thick laptop they'd put a better keyboard in it, but honestly, with the components inside, I understand why they didn't do that. Now, pretty soon I'll actually have a video coming out going completely over all the components inside here. So make sure you hit subscribe so you guys can see that. I'm not going to go over that in this video for sake of time. But anyway, now jumping into design, aesthetics-wise and whatnot, it is a very good looking machine. It is huge, you know, and so some people may think it looks weird, but when you pull this out in public, or, you know, even around friends that haven't seen it or something like that, their mind kind of goes weird. They kind of start asking questions because it's such a massive laptop. So you've actually got this metal flake black. It's a matte black and it's a metal flake that looks absolutely beautiful. It avoids fingerprints really well. I can just wipe my hands all over it and there's almost no fingerprints. They're hardly visible, and it's all over the entire machine. It's even the edges and stuff. It's the whole machine is this metal flake, and I don't know if it's actually a metal in there, but it's a flake of some sort, and it looks absolutely beautiful. The keyboard is a multi-zone keyboard. I believe it's a 3-zone keyboard. No, sorry, 4-zone. You've got 3 zones on the main, and then you've got the numpad that are customizable between, I believe it goes all full RGB. So that is a pretty cool thing to see. The trackpad is good. I wouldn't really rate the fingerprint sensor as anything special. It's just kind of generic, but the trackpad does track very well, and the buttons here are really nice and clicky, so it's nice to see that. As you can see, MSI Afterburner just popped up. But anyway, so going through the design though, I actually wanted to bring up the ports that we have on this, because it is loaded with ports. So on the right side of the laptop here, we've got a USB 3.0 single one, and then we're gonna have your full-size SD card slot. We've got 2 USB Type-C Thunderbolt connections that also support USB 3.1. Really nice to see that this would be compatible with external graphics docks, all kinds of other docks, adapters, and so it's really great to see at least one of those on a machine, but having 2 of them, that is super cool. No, you can't charge through them like a lot of computers though, of course, a lot of laptops that have come out. 2 mini display ports, which is really cool to see as well. You've got loaded with display capabilities on what this is able to output to. You know, you can run 4 monitors off of it. It's got enough connections for it. You got your Kensington lock port. Along the back side here, we've got your HDMI. We've got another USB 3.0, which I really like to see one in the back there. That's great for cable management when it's sitting on a desk. And speaking of which, I have a video of cable management coming up again here soon. It's actually a sequel to my previous one, which you can check out right here again. We've got your power port. So on the left side here, we've got 2 Ethernet ports, which is extremely surprising to see on a laptop. It's not something that you'd see being a very common thing even in desktops. It can be useful for a number of things, and if you do get the Windows 10 Pro on here instead of Home Premium or upgrade to Pro, it does support NIC teaming, meaning these are gigabit Ethernet ports, but you can actually team them together as long as you have the speeds, and if you needed that kind of speeds, you can get a 2 gigabit connection wired on this without any extra adapters or anything. We've got 3 USB 3.0 though on this side here, and it's super awesome. One of them is actually a continual charging port, so it will allow you to charge like your phone and stuff like that when the laptop's off, which is really cool. And then we've got your audio ports, which is a little bit special. You've got a dedicated headphone port, 2 auxiliary ports, and a which not auxiliary outputs. There are ports that can be configured for different things, such as a subwoofer out, and then we have a dedicated mic input. So loaded with ports here. I'm really impressed with that overall. But getting back to the overall aesthetics of the machine. So the top of it here is, again, also coated in that beautiful metal flake matte black. And then you've got your accent lighting here, here and here on these sides. And it can be changed, configured with multiple different colors, and it does glow. It looks good. It's a small aesthetic thing. Now, when I have this sitting on a desk, I leave it closed, so it's really cool to see that. Other than that though, there's not much to talk about design wise. We do have your fans that pull air through the front and the bottom. They are pretty beefy fans. So that'll be it for the design aspects of this machine. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the performance of this machine, but I'm actually not going to go over frames per second very much in games or render times for the CPU, because this is again running desktop components. It is a desktop 1070, it is a desktop 6700K, it's even socketed in there. So, performance-wise, I'm not going to go over a whole bunch of games with this unless you guys really want to see that, because there's no thermal throttling, or basically no thermal throttling, and so you're going to be getting identical performance, maybe 1 FPS lower on compared to a desktop 1070. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, yeah, so the GPU itself, 1070, it is capable of running most games at 1080p maxed out. There are very few that it can't do. I'm able to play, just a game, for example, like Call of Duty Black Ops 3, highest settings averaging probably around 95 frames per second. If you guys want to see a little bit more gameplay and a little bit of fan noise demonstration and stuff, check out the video up in the corner here. That is going to be my video. I did a pretty good segment there specifically going over how this laptop sounds noise level wise, what the temperatures are like, and some performance aspects of it in games. So check that video out if you're interested in seeing that. But I just do want to brush up on the noise of the fans here when it comes to performance. And so the fans themselves, there's 3 of them in there. They're actually dedicated to a specific component. So we've got a CPU fan dedicated for the CPU heatsink and 2 GPU fans, 1 for each GPU. They are both come installed even if you get the single GPU configuration. So keep that in mind as well. Now, that does not mean you get lower temperatures though. So when you get the single GPU configuration, you do not get 2 fans for that 1 GPU to give you better performance and better thermals. I wish they'd done that, but I understand why they didn't. Copper's expensive. They didn't want to increase the price anymore to put a bigger heatsink in there. Totally understandable. But there is that second fan in there, so if you add a GPU later, or if you get the dual GPU configuration, you have a dedicated fan for that second GPU, that third component there. Fan noise wise, it is pretty good. You know, it's not ridiculously loud. It's something, you know, you can't hear it at idle hardly at all right now. I can kind of hear it, but it's not, you know, going over anything. Now, if you are gaming or doing any kind of load on this, it does get pretty loud. It's not something that's going to necessarily be aggravating. It's not that super high-pitched whine that a lot of smaller gaming laptops and you know, Ultrabooks and whatnot have out of their small fans. It's a little bit lower pitch, but it's definitely going to be louder than a desktop counterpart. It's even going to be louder than a reference GPU like a 1070 or a 1080. So keep that in mind. It is a fairly loud machine. It's still a great machine though, so just, you know, bear that in mind. So other performance things that I'd like to talk about though would actually be the speakers. These speakers absolutely blew my mind. So I would turn them on right now, but there are people asleep all the way on the other side of the house, and I would wake them up because that's how good these speakers are. They are incredibly loud, they are incredibly crisp, there is no distortion whatsoever. They sound absolutely beautiful. They're loud enough to completely fill a room and more with sound. There's a decent amount of bass. You know, you're not going to get crazy bass out of a laptop, but it is crazy considering it's a laptop. And the low frequencies are there. You can at least hear them. And it does shake the table a little bit. It vibrates the table. So the speaker-wise, you will not be disappointed. This is absolutely amazing. But speaking of speakers, jumping into headphones, this has actually got a dedicated headphone DAC and amp built in. It's by Sound Blaster. It is a good one. I don't know if it's based on their Z series or not, but it does have a dedicated headphone output that is capable of handling high amperage headphones. Now, they seem to kind of half advertise in some of their software that it's capable of handling 600 ohms. I don't know if that's completely true or not, so take that with a grain of salt. But I would have pretty much no doubt that this can handle 300 ohms and down resistance-wise on headphones. I didn't have any high impedance headphones to test it with currently, but I did use it on my HyperX Clouds, which I believe are a 30 ohm impedance, and I have to leave the volume around 10 to 15%, otherwise it's too loud, it hurts my ears. So that gives you an idea of how much power it's capable of outputting. And then display-wise, when it comes to performance, is actually pretty good. So the display here is a 1080p 120Hz non-G-Sync panel. It is a really pretty panel though. It's very color accurate. It's IPS. You get great viewing angles. It is one of the better looking 1080p panels that I've seen on a laptop, and it is matte, but it is just absolutely beautiful panel, and the colors are amazing. It's fun to edit on this because I do edit on the go quite a bit with this machine on the go. But anyway, the 120Hz refresh rate is great. I've actually personally had never experienced 120Hz refresh rate until this machine, and man, let me tell you, it was way bigger of a difference than I thought it was. I've seen 75 Hz before, and I didn't think the jump would be quite as drastic as I saw between 60 and 75 Hz, but it is just so fluid, and it's really unfortunate that that's ruined by the fact that we don't have G-Sync. Now the GPU in here, the single 1070, which is actually the lowest configuration you can get this machine with, is pretty good at powering most games in the high 100s. So you don't generally experience, you know, really bad stuttering or anything like that. It is kind of within the panels, close to the panel's refresh rate, generally speaking. So, you know, kudos on that, but still, I'd really like to see a G-Sync option available with this Sager. So please include that or update this or something. I know it might add a little bit to the price, but I would have paid another $100 for that myself, but I don't use the built-in display enough to justify jumping up to the 1080 version with the 1440p screen. So battery life in this machine, kind of funny to touch on. Don't even really think about it. So it's desktop components. They don't support NVIDIA Optimus technology, meaning you can't use the built-in GPU or built-in GPU on the CPU. And as far as I know, I couldn't figure out any workarounds for that. It's not in my NVIDIA control panel options or anything. So you're going to be running on that dedicated desktop-grade GPU constantly. So you're going to be killing the battery life on here pretty quickly. So keep that in mind. Since I started this video, since you've been watching this, it has gone down 25%. I unplugged it about a minute before turning on the camera. You're looking at like an hour on this machine, and that's of like basic web browsing. You're watching videos, you might push it to an hour. Gaming, don't even think about it. So just do not get this if you plan to use it for an actual portable machine. It is more portable desktop that you bring with you that has a lovely built-in display so that you don't have to bring a display with you as well, which is nice. So the last thing I'd actually like to touch on this though is a little bit interesting. It's the upgradability of this laptop. So I've always kind of flopped back and forth between laptops and desktops because I've always had the trouble of wanting a desktop because I like working on them. I like the upgradability and the customization that you can do, but I hate that I can't really easily take it everywhere. And when I build a desktop, I like to build them big. I don't like to build a small portable desktop. I know that's a good solution, but that's not what I personally like to do. And so I've always had that trouble of I'll buy a laptop, I'm like, man, the power's not good enough, I can't do that much to it, and I end up selling it and going back to a desktop and flopping back and forth. And this machine has solved that problem for me. So the upgradability aspect of this is on par with desktops for basically everything except custom stuff like custom lighting that you'd add later or something like that. There's not a lot of that you can easily do to this, you know, mods and whatnot. But it supports full desktop components, and so I actually configured mine with one of the lower configurations, which is 6700K and the single GTX 1070. But if you contact Sager, they will actually ship you parts to upgrade this laptop with new GPUs and whatnot. So it does support MXM 3.0 GPUs. That's the slotted form factor for laptops. So you can add in a second GPU later, or I could even upgrade it to a 1080 or dual 1080s if I wanted to. Slot it in. You can buy the heat sinks and the screws and everything separate. If you're interested in doing that, by the way, check out the link in the description, RJ Tech. They are also able to sell that kind of stuff. They don't necessarily have everything, like the power cable that you would need for that second GPU. You do have to get from Sager. I already ordered mine because I do plan to do a 1070 upgrade to this later. But RJ Tech has most of what you would need. Anyway though, so you're able to get a hold of the heatsink, you're able to get a hold of the power cable, you're able to get a hold of the GPU and the thermal pads and the extra power bricks and everything that you'll need to upgrade this like you would a desktop with the GPU. And Sager could even add BIOS update support for newer GPUs, assuming that what AMD and NVIDIA are going to be releasing come out in the MXM 3.0 form factor as well. So that would be really cool. Having a dedicated upgradable CPU that's socketed is actually really cool too, because if Intel's 7th generation CPUs come out and they support the same socket as the Skylake CPUs, which from trends that's likely to happen, you could dump a newer CPU in this and upgrade from Skylake and it'd be no problem, and they're going to be more power efficient anyway, so the cooler is going to do an even better job. Again, assuming Sager releases BIOS updates to support all of that. Now, to finish the upgradability, though, you have two M.2 ports. They're the 2280 SSD M.2 ports. So you could upgrade this potentially now with 2 terabytes of SSD storage that is NVMe, you know, really incredibly fast. And then you have 2 2.5-inch drive slots as well. I'm going to be configuring mine with hard drives for bulk storage, but you could throw SSDs in there if you'd like as well. So massive amounts of storage upgradability, and you do have 4 RAM slots, so you are able to add up to 64 gigabytes of RAM, which is really awesome to see on a laptop. There aren't a lot that support that even in the gaming segment, so it's cool to see that. So that is probably what solved my issue there, is having a machine that is capable of delivering upgradability like a desktop would have and future-proofing like a desktop would have, but also the portable form factor that kind of I require for my lifestyle. So some closing thoughts on this machine. basically is that it is an awesome machine. You can configure it on Sager's website. There's not much to knock on it other than it being absolutely huge, and the temperatures are pretty high. Like I said in that video, you can check out the other video, which again is up there, to check out the temperatures on it. But you're looking at like 90 C or so on the CPU and around 80 C or so on the GPU. So you're looking at some pretty high temperatures, but it's amazing to cram all of that in here. It does have a great keyboard. You know, the upgradability is awesome. The display options are great, although I would like to see a 1440p option available for the 1070, because I don't believe it is. I believe it's just the 1080p panel, which is a little bit unfortunate. But they change their configurations all the time as well, because this is the package that you get here. So final thoughts are pretty much that it is awesome, though. You get great performance, you get full desktop parts, desktop upgradability, and full desktop performance out of those desktop parts. And you get a great machine that is overall built well, and great customer service. They respond so quickly, they're willing to help you with pretty much anything. I was able to order that custom power cable for the second GPU from them. You know, albeit it was a little expensive, but they were able to help me right away. They were able to get an order set up, and they shipped it, and it came in like 4 days or something like that from the time that I tried to order it. So thank you, Sager, for supporting that. And anyway, everybody, thank you for watching. Let me know what you guys think of the laptop. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the video. And thank you, everybody, for watching.